Razor 6 Able, over. 6 Able, we have 4 or 5 dip tanks in our rear supply area. Can't get to them. Can you get some tanks up here, over? This is Razor 6 Able, negative. No tanks, but I have a Tier 1-6 with an anti-tank gun. Send location, over. Roger 6 Able. They're between hills 290 and 326, south of the village. King Company reports 4 tankettes and at least 2 medium tanks, type 9 or 7, proceeding west toward Uiju, over. Roger 4. Roger Fox 4-6, dispatching our tear dog with a...
Iwo Jima is a small volcanic island located between Japan and the Mariana Islands. It had strategic importance as an airbase location for the US to launch long-range bombing raids against Japan. Controlling Iwo Jima would provide a crucial emergency landing strip for American bombers returning from Japan. The battle, fought from February 19th to March 26th, 1945, was one of the bloodiest in the Pacific theater. The Japanese defenders were deeply entrenched in a network of tunnels. The photograph of US Marines raising the American flag on Mount Suribachi became one of the most famous images of the war. The image captured the resilience and determination of American forces, symbolizing their progress in the battle. The capture of Iwo Jima was seen as a significant morale boost for the US. The image of the American flag being raised on the island resonated with people back home and bolstered support for the war effort. Overall, the Battle of Iwo Jima was significant due to its strategic importance, the intense fighting that took place, its impact on morale, and the role it played in the larger context of the Pacific Campaign during the war. Operation Detachment, the amphibious assault on Iwo Jima, had its genesis from September 29th to October 1st, 1944. Securing Luzon, the largest of the Philippine Islands, received priority following a forceful submission by General Douglas MacArthur, Southwest Pacific Area Commander, and his staff. The target date for the Luzon operation was December 20th. Luzon was to be followed by the occupation of the Bonin's volcano group, which including Iwo Jima and Okinawa. Both island chains range roughly north to south in the Pacific South of the central Japanese home island of Honshu. Thus, the more easterly Bonins and the more westerly Ryukyus are figurative stepping stones to the heart of Japan. They were also integral parts of Japan's vital inner defense zone. The roughly 60,000 US service members taking part in the assault on Iwo Jima were faced by approximately 21,000 Japanese troops. Japanese defensive doctrine had evolved considerably since the Central Pacific battles of 1943 and early 1944. By the Marianas Campaign, many senior Japanese officers had accepted the impossibility of achieving victory against the Allies and had determined to do their utmost to delay the inevitable at the highest cost they could inflict on their enemy. As Japanese commanders had demonstrated on Peleliu in September 1944, all-out attempts to repulse Allied forces on the landing beaches were no longer undertaken. Instead, the assault troops were to be subjected to a step-by-step battle of attrition, slowly progressing from one well-defended killing zone to the next. US air superiority, particularly after operations in the Philippines were underway, left Japanese ground forces with negligible or non-existent air cover against Allied bombing raids. This led to the construction of mutually supporting, deeply seated and heavily fortified strongpoints, bunkers and artillery positions, often connected by extensive tunnel systems with stockpiles of ammunition and food. The Japanese response to overwhelming American firepower was simple: to dig in and dig deep. General Tadamichi Kuribayashi, commander of the Japanese forces on Iwo Jima, had been assigned to the island in June 1944 and had immediately begun extensive defensive preparations, with much construction accomplished at night to escape aerial surveillance and attacks. Unlike the Americans, many of whom had viewed the difficult fighting on Peleliu as an isolated aberration rather than as doctrinal evolution, Kuribayashi drew on lessons learned from that battle. Moreover, he discouraged his subordinates from viewing so-called banzai charges as viable tactics, impressing on them that effectively delaying and then killing the enemy were priorities. By the time that Fifth Fleet began bombarding Iwo Jima, all Japanese civilians had been evacuated from the island, and Kuribayashi had done everything within his limited means to make the US assault as costly as possible. Iwo Jima is 8 square miles in area and shaped like a pork chop, its widest part oriented toward the northeast. The island's narrow southwestern tip is dominated by a small mountain, Mount Suribachi, which is a dormant volcano vent. 2 completed airfields and 1 under construction were located respectively from the southwest toward the northeast on Iwo Jima's center line. Kuribayashi had divided the island into 5 defensive sectors with central reserve areas. US planners had designated landing beaches along both southern and northern shorelines between Suribachi and the wider part of the island, but only the southern beaches were used in the assault. Bombing raids and occasional naval bombardment had been carried out against Japanese facilities on Iwo Jima since June 1944, and this bombing intensified in the weeks leading up to D-Day. Although the air raids damaged some Japanese fortifications, Navy underwater demolition teams landed for a beach reconnaissance overestimated the bombing mission's impact and did not note the full extent of the Japanese underground fortifications.
This is Razor 6 Able, over. 6 Able, we have 4 or 5 dip tanks in our rear supply area. Can't get through them. Can you get some tanks up here, over? This is Razor 6 Able, negative. No tanks, but I have a Tier 1-6 with an anti-tank gun. Send location, over. Roger, 6 Able. They're between hills 290 and 326, south of the village. King Company reports 4 tankettes and at least 2 medium tanks type 9 or 7 proceeding west toward Kwiju, over. Roger, 4. Roger, Fox, 4-6, dispatching our Care Dog with a bazooka team. Out. Break, Care Dog 1-6, this is Razor 6 Able. Did you monitor Fox 4-6, over? Razor 6 Able, this is Care Dog 1-6, roger, loading up bazooka team now, be on the way in 02, over. Care Dog 1-6, this is Razor 6 Able, roger, advise when you make contact, over. This is Care Dog 1-6, will code, out. Sugar 50, this is Hound Dog 7, over. This is Sugar 50, go ahead, over. This is Hound Dog 7, fire mission. Enemy troops estimate company size and 2 tanks moving west on road 48. Coordinates 179er322. My position 323-481. Will adjust, over. This is Sugar 50. Sending you one round, Willie Peter. Wait. Hound Dog 7. On the way. Splash. How did we look, over? Sugar 50, close but short. Up 200, left 15. Over. Roger, Hound Dog 7. On the way. Wait. Splash. This is Hound Dog 7. Target. Fire 4 attacks. Over. Local Hound Dog 7 sending you 10 rounds HE and 5 Willie Peter. On the way. Hey, impact in 8 seconds. Over. Sugar 50, this is Hound Dog 7. Nice shooting. Target all but wiped out. What is left is heading 23 Skidoo back to home. Over.
Amphibious Corps requested a concentrated shore bombardment for 10 days prior to the landings. However, citing ammunition supply issues, Task Force 52, the amphibious support force providing fire support, only provided 3. Adverse weather curtailed bombardment operations on February 16, the first day. Ultimately, only 13 hours of effective bombardment were carried out over the 3-day period. Fifth Fleet also began mine-sweeping operations around the island, specifically of the approaches to the designated landing beaches. Prior to the operation, Spruance had detached Task Force 58, his fast carriers, to strike strategic targets on Honshu in wide-ranging support of the landings. The Marines, already unhappy with the shortened duration of naval gunfire support and believing continuous close air support of the ground forces should take priority, hardly welcomed this decision. Almost precisely at H-hour, the 1st Assault Wave, with 5th Marine Division units on the left and 4th Marine Division units to the right, landed on the assigned beach sectors. The Japanese held their force until 1000 hours after the Marines' first wave was on the beaches and the covering naval gunfire had momentarily eased. The sudden, unexpected volume and accuracy of artillery and mortars clearly indicated that bombing and naval bombardment had not markedly affected the enemy. This had a devastating effect on the buildup on the beaches. All of the sectors suffered casualties, although green and red beaches, flanked by Japanese positions on Mount Suribachi, and the blue beaches, fronted by enemy and placed in the cliffs of a rock quarry, were perhaps hardest hit. Further handicapping the Marines was the instable beach, composed of steep terraces of constantly shifting black sand, volcanic cinders, and ash. This made digging in very difficult and bogged down wheeled and even tracked vehicles, causing pile-ups of men, amphibious tractors, tanks, and supplies at the waterline. These were subjected to constant Japanese artillery, mortar, and machine gun fire. The steep beach gradient also caused a violent surf zone with which landing craft and tractors had to contend. These difficulties notwithstanding, the landings were successfully executed and, under cover of a rolling naval gunfire barrage and close air support mainly provided by 5th Fleet's escort carriers, the Marines began moving off the beaches.
got some tanks up here, over. This is Razor 6 Able, negative. No tanks, but I have a Tier 1-6 with an anti-tank gun. Same location, over. Roger 6 Able. They're between hills 290 and 326, south of the village. King Company reports 4 tankettes and at least 2 medium tanks, type 9 or 7, proceeding west toward Iwo, over. Roger, Fox 4-6, dispatching our care dog with a bazooka team. Out. Break, care dog 1-6, this is Razor 6 Able. Did you monitor Fox 4-6, over? Razor 6 Able, this is care dog 1-6, Roger, loading up bazooka team now, be on the way in 0-2, over. Care dog 1-6, this is Razor 6 Able. Roger, advise when you make contact, over. This is Care Dog 1-6, full tow. Now. Sugar 50, this is Hound Dog 7, over. This is Sugar 50, go ahead, over. This is Hound Dog 7, fire mission. Enemy troops estimate company size in 2 tanks, moving west on road 48. Coordinates 179er322. My position 323481. Will adjust, over. This is Sugar 50. Sending you 1 round, Willie Peter. Wait. Now Dog 7. On the way. Splash. How do we look, over? Sugar 50. Close but short. Up 200. Left 15. Over. Roger, Hound Dog 7. On the way. Wait. Splash. This is Hound Dog 7. Target, fire or attacks, over. Local Hound Dog 7 sending you 10 rounds HE and 5 Willie Peter. On the way. Hey, impact in 8 seconds, over. Sugar 50, this is Hound Dog 7. Nice shooting. Target all but wiped out. What is left is heading 23 Skidoo back to home, over. Roger, Hound Dog 7. Glad we could help. Night.
5th Marine Division pushed to the northwestern shore in order to isolate Mount Suribachi and accomplished this task within 90 minutes of the initial landings. The 4th Marine Division's progress was much slower, however, as it proceeded toward the airfields. One of these lay directly in front of the Marines, but the second, more centrally located field required a wheeling movement toward the northeast, which brought most of this division into a bowl-like area completely exposed to heavy Japanese fire. By the end of D-Day, nearly 30,000 personnel had landed on Iwo Jima despite rapidly deteriorating weather conditions, the difficult terrain, and stubborn, well-coordinated Japanese resistance. Although the Marines had managed to cross the island at its narrow width and had cut off Mount Suribachi, the day's planned phase line had not been reached, while casualties mounted at an alarming rate. The beachhead remained concentrated in a triangular area roughly 4,000 yards long. D+1 saw the landing of 3rd Marine Division, the Corps Reserve, and later taking up battle space between the two previously committed Marine divisions. Meanwhile, the 5th Division's 28th Marine Regiment began its assault of Mount Suribachi, which was garrisoned by 2,000 Japanese troops and extensively honeycombed with defensive positions and tunnels, one of them 7 levels deep. Bolstered by reinforcements from 3rd Marine Division, other 5th Marine Division units and the 4th Marine Division slowly continued to force their way northwest and northeast. Navy destroyers, many assigned to specific Marine units, provided direct gunfire support, although frequently the targets of Japanese guns, Marine tanks, Amphtrax and artillery did the same, providing mobile firepower to the engaged infantry units. 5th Fleet aircraft continued to fly close support missions, often dropping napalm on the deeply dug-in enemy. Ultimately, however, small teams of Marines, or even individuals, armed with flamethrowers, satchel charges and hand grenades, were those who were instrumental in destroying Japanese strongpoints. The cost was commensurate. By the end of D+1, many Marine rifle companies had lost up to 50% of their pre-assault strength in killed and wounded. Operational momentum remained extremely slow, and progress was measured in yards of ground taken. From February 21st into March, despite Japanese tenacity and ingenuity, US forces were gradually able to make significant advances. During the night of February 21st, ships on the outer periphery of the amphibious landing area were subjected to the only kamikaze attack experienced during the operation. The escort carrier Bismarck C was lost, and fleet carrier Saratoga was so badly damaged that she had to return stateside for repair and never returned to combat. shore, while the Marines reached the summit of Mount Suribachi on the morning of February 23rd, soon after the initial landing, the rest of the battle for the island would take the month that followed in heavy fighting. Despite the iconic and certainly morale-boosting flag-raising hidden pockets of enemy continued their resistance on the mountain, a blow to Kuribayashi's defenses. Airfield No. 1, the southernmost air facility, was captured after hard fighting by D+1, while the Marines continued to move northward, aided by an armored task force of several Marine tank companies. As they advanced, they encountered well-coordinated and led counterattacks by the Japanese, a surprise to those U.S. service members who had experienced chaotic enemy banzai charges in the past. Tanks were put out of action by mines, suicide squads, or well-camouflaged anti-tank guns, and the Marine rifle companies were subjected to constant artillery, mortar, and small arms fire. To the frustration of the ground forces, many Japanese positions proved impervious to close air support bombing and strafing and had to be taken by direct ground assault or by sealing off entrances. After 9 days, the drive north had progressed 4,000 yards at a cost of 7,000 U.S. casualties, but by March 4th, Airfield No. 2 had been secured after hard fighting, and the Marines had degraded General Kuribayashi's defenses to the point at which many Japanese heavy weapons were out of action. On March 14th, the island's occupation was officially announced, although fighting continued for 2 further weeks. Finally, on March 26th, Iwo Jima was declared secure. Of the roughly 21,000 Japanese defenders, 216 survived the battle to be taken prisoner, and an estimated 3,000 went into hiding during the U.S. occupation of the island. By August 1945, most of these had either been killed, captured, or had surrendered. But one group did not lay down its arms until 1949. Having done his utmost to forestall the inevitable, General Kuribayashi committed suicide in his command post on March 23, 1945. The perceived strategic position and utility of the island were not immediately apparent to its occupiers. The Japanese radar station, the American operators soon learned, had actually been incapable of providing necessary early warning data to Japanese home island air defenses. For their part, prior to operation detachment, the Japanese had effectively written off the island's airfield for any significant operational employment. As a way station for U.S. Army Air Force's aircraft, Iwo Jima again appeared to offer little advantage. Utilizing Iwo Jima's airfields for U.S. escort fighters in the end proved to be logistically difficult and very hard on the P-51 pilots, who faced a 1,500 nautical mile round trip. The field's capacity, moreover, was limited, about the same as that provided by one Navy fleet carrier. Far fewer B-29s than anticipated actually made use of the island as an emergency landing or refueling site. The airfields did host an active search and rescue operation, but the number of downed U.S. aviators picked up by aircraft from Iwo Jima seems insignificant in comparison to the number of lives lost in the island's capture. Operation detachment cost U.S. forces 6,871 killed and 19,217 wounded. Medals of honor were awarded to 22 Marines and 5 sailors, 14 of them posthumously. As Admiral Chester W. Nimitz, commander of Pacific Fleet and Pacific Ocean areas, noted after the battle, "Uncommon valor was a common virtue.